Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Anna Wong. I was a Bergen County resident for 5 years, lived in Paramus with my wife, Lexa, and currently now living in Orange County, New York. But spent a lot of time community organizing in Bergen County through organizations like Indivisible, Women for Progress, and a lot of local small town-based groups as well. And so in my time there, met a lot of people in the community. So looking forward to talking with you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. All right, so the questions I'm asking everyone is just pretty straightforward. Is why do you think there is no LGBT center in Bergen County? Do you think it's needed, and what would those needs be?
Yeah. I think this is a really interesting and profoundly important question because when we moved to Paramus, I grew up in Queens. I met my wife bartending in the West Village of New York. Doesn't get any more comfortable for gays than that part of the city. And when we made this move to the suburbs, it was to be frank, frightening, right? Because you don't know what kind of community you're going to end up in. And I think we all have a certain idea of what suburban America is like, even in, 2021 or at the time, 2015. And, you're in a community and you are very clearly the only LGBTQ couple or person for what you believe is miles on end. And it's tough because you're uncomfortable, right? And I think until you've been in those shoes, as an LGBTQ person, or I think if you're a person of color, that's probably the closest thing to that feeling. It's hard to explain how uncomfortable that can be. And we found ourselves sort of, I guess, unsure. And I think the saddest part was like, little things that, other people do on a daily basis, you have to really stop and gut check yourself. So something as small as holding your partner's hand, even giving them a certain glance that might be, not platonic. And you're just wondering who's watching, right? Is somebody going to react? Are you going to be judged? So there's a lot of uncomfortability there. And so, we moved to Bergen County and that never really went away. You find some friends along the way and you realize, okay, there are people who are accepting of, LGBTQ people. That's great. But like, how do you find your community, right? Pride rolls around, you don't see pride flags, right? It's not the kind of celebration that you see, not even 50 miles away in New York City. And you're in New Jersey. It's not like we're in Alabama. So that is a really perplexing thing. And, as I was getting more involved in organizing, obviously for different, reasons, we started seeing like, okay, there's a lot of local need, right? It's just something as small as seeing a pride flag go up, for the month of Pride. Who knew there would be such resistance to literally just a flag? It was heartening to see a lot of members in the community, especially allies, fight for that. And young people really come out and feel seen, seeing other people fight for this. But a flag is just like the first tiny little baby step. It's like a toe dipped in the water, because what you really need is resources. What you really need is community. So if you are somebody who is, struggling as a young person or as a young adult, or even as an adult or a senior, where do you go, right? Where do you go in Bergen County? You're not going to Feathers. You're going to Feathers for a drink, maybe to meet somebody, maybe, to dance. But Feathers is not going to be the place where you go when you need help. So my question is, where do you go if you're a Bergen County resident and you need help? If you need help figuring out, maybe you're having really not positive thoughts as of late. Maybe you are in a relationship that is not healthy. How do you deal with that? What if you're a teenager and your parents are not accepting and you are about to be homeless, where do you go for help? Where do you go for help if you are an adult LGBTQ person who, you know, your, I don't know, partner of 20, 30 years has passed? Where do you go for help? So my question is, how do you answer those questions an LGBTQ center? That's how it works. That's how it works in New York. That's how it works in Los Angeles. That's how it works in places where they have spent the time and resources and money to invest in these communities, because we exist. We're here. Just because, you know, we're not, you know, I guess the easy thing would be if we all put pride flags in our windows, then you would really know where we all are, but we're not all doing that. But, you know, like, how do you help support this community if you don't have a center for us all to go to and know about, right? I mean, I reference Callan Lord really often because that's one of the premier life-saving places in New York City. I've been there many times when I had no money. It was the only place I could get healthcare, just something as simple as an annual checkup. And I have friends who still go there because they don't have health insurance. And it's the only place they feel safe going to. So if so many of my friends from my New York community rely on a place like that, where do people go if they live in Bergen County? And what is the reluctance, you know, in providing a safe space like that? You know, if you have healthier community members, healthier and safer community members, they then in turn are, you know, giving back to your community in healthier and safer ways. So I don't understand how in 2021 this is still a question. You know, we have women's centers, we have senior centers, we have so many different kinds of centers. And I just see that LGBTQ is, you know, should be a priority. I mean, when you're talking about just the rate of homelessness, right? Yeah, like homeless youth, you know, we did a sleep out, I think it was like 2 years ago, where we, you know, spent a night sleeping out on the streets with Covenant House.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was eye-opening because you look around and you, I mean, statistics and just even looking around, a majority of homeless youth are LGBTQ. So you're talking about people who don't even get a chance at starting their life. Like their life is over before they've even begun. How do we stop that?
Yeah.
How do we prevent, you know, it's about employing preventative measures, right? Giving people the support before they get lost. And I think it behooves us as community members to provide that. You know, and not to mention, obviously, like all things, you know, it's systemic and it definitely impacts, you know, LGBTQ people of color far more than not of color. And so, I mean, when you're talking about, do we need a center? I mean, I don't know, that's not even a question to me. Yes, you need a center. Yes, you need a center.
Absolutely. Can I all right, so for me, it's dealing with perceptions of what LGBT means, and you know, what is the reality and what are the perceptions?
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned that there's so many homeless youth that are LGBT, and you witness that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've witnessed that, you know, personally, and then also in work. So what do you say when people sit there like, oh, LGBT people are always the rich 1% because they don't have children and they're always more richer and everything like that? That's like a
Oh
real
my
thing.
God.
Think that if you're gay, you've got
The
everything.
stereotype, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I can fight your stereotype with my stereotype, which is lesbians are like the poorest people on earth. I mean, you're talking about a woman who's already underpaid, and then make that two women on top of that.
Yeah.
You know, it was a running joke that they're also really bad tippers, but you know, that's not all. I mean, I think that's such an awful stereotype, right? I don't even understand how stereotypes like that arise. What, because you see Neil Patrick Harris on TV and you're like, oh, wealthy gay man. They're all wealthy. Like, no, that's not true.
No, it's the furthest from the truth, though. You know,
Yeah.
we're like hugely disadvantaged because of the impact of being LGBT in a culture that's just so against you. Education, everything's double.
Everything. I mean, I can give you a personal example. we're trying to start a family. My insurance doesn't cover infertility. It costs, just the sperm alone is almost $10,000.
Wow.
The services alone after that to have your eggs harvested and fertilized and reimplanted, it's like $30,000. And so am I less deserving of having a child?
Yeah.
Why do I have to pay out of pocket for these things that for other people it's covered?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure at this point we're really reaching like a reckoning in terms of infertility in this country. I mean, that's a whole other discussion, but now you have straight couples who are suffering and can now finally empathize, because I get told all the time, just go adopt. Oh, and should I not be allowed to try to have biological children? And so there's a lot of, I guess, there's a lot of hardship there, but there's also a lot of bias. And to me, that's a problem of privilege that I'm carrying, right? We're not talking about me struggling with, illness, or, God forbid, let's say, I needed top surgery, and that to me is like, I have friends who that is the only thing that they have to look forward to maybe have some semblance of a happy life. And top surgery is not cheap.
Yeah.
And then you also talk about having just supportive services, before and after that, right? It really boils down to, I think a lot of people have this perception of like, you you want, like, it's almost like we're extra special cases. We didn't ask for this, right? I mean, our lives would be much easier if we were cis and white and straight. But we were born into the bodies that we were born in, with the brains that we have, and everyone deserves a chance at happiness. Everyone deserves to thrive. Everyone deserves, at the minimum, of the basic necessities to have, a fulfilled life. And that's all we're asking for. We're just asking for a center that supports that. Because, unfortunately, you just know when you go to other places that are not equipped to handle, conversations with LGBTQ people, there is certain sensitivities. There's a certain, mindset and just language alone, that, you really need to have trained, supportive people who understand that to provide that kind of care. And so I think it's really, it's tempting to look at this as a non-issue, just because it's not affecting you. And I think that is, unfortunately, a common occurrence in a lot of, communities, not just Bergen County, across the country. It's, you hear of a story and it doesn't affect you, or it's not in your family, so it's not a problem. That's not the case. I mean, is addiction not a problem just because it didn't happen in your family? Addiction is rampant across the country. Is sexual assault not a problem because it hasn't happened in your family? It happens every day across the country. So just because it doesn't happen to you, or has not happened to you, thank goodness for that. But when the time comes, and I assure you there is an LGBTQ person in your family somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that the person is supported.
Yeah. Thank you. That's so on point.
It would have made such a big difference, even for me growing up in Queens, New York, to have known that there was a community center that I could go to, right? Before I was, when I was too afraid to come out, or even before I could even understand what the feelings I was having, right? There was no club in school. I hung out at the library. That was like the only place in the community to go to. If there were a community center, oh my God. I mean, I was depressed my entire childhood. And I don't think I ever really understood why, and figuring out my identity was a huge part of that. So I can't imagine, because I look back and I'm like, man, those were years and years and years that I lost. I'm trying to make up for lost time, but man, And
Yeah.
like, and thank God I didn't become, just another number, because I think many of us who, live this life, it's like we've all thought about, self-harm. And it's so crazy. I'm just thinking about this now, but yeah, I can't even imagine just having that kind of a lifeline, just having that sense of, safe space. That's all we want. Everybody just wants a safe space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for that. Just thank you. So is there anything you want to add to this conversation that
I do. I think, I think the goal in life is, you provide these spaces, and until you provide these spaces, you don't really know like how deep that need is. And, I don't think that this is a question of, should it exist or not? It should absolutely exist. The question is, how do we make it happen? How do we come together as a community and support these community members? And how do we get to a point where, you know, the services rendered are not about saving lives, but enriching lives, right? Because that's really the ultimate goal. But at this point, we're talking about saving lives. We're talking about saving lives and supporting people so that they feel safe. It's Bergen County, New Jersey. Like, to me, there's no question. Like, we've raised flags, and that's incredible. And there's so many allies out there now. And I think that this is the logical next step, right? You have shown your support in terms of allyship. We see you. Now let's give you a safe space to be in. So I would call upon every person that, we know in this community, and there's so many, thousands and thousands. And I know that they're out there. And, I guess this is a PSA, like, hey, it's time to take the next step. So, we need more than flags. We need a safe space. And Bergen County, one of the wealthiest counties in the country, I think we can afford to put together a little safe space for our people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, if you like watching American Horror Story and Pose, I mean, imagine all the amazing things that could happen in Bergen County if we create a safe space for people to continue to thrive and share their contributions with us. And so I would love to see this community step up and make that happen. I know it can be done because I've seen other endeavors come to fruition, and I know that this can happen. But it's really going to just take everybody stepping up, talking to your local officials and elected leaders, let them know that this is a need, and it is something that will enrich our community, because if it helps save just one life, it's worth it.
Absolutely. And I think people forget that because they're like, oh, what's in the grander scheme of things, what's one life? And to me, it's like that's what it's about,
That's exactly what it's about. Because what if that one life is somebody you love?
Yeah. And because I experienced that, I've worked with people I've lost because of lack of services in last year. And so I'm very in that moment. And that's what it is for me. But still, the reality is it's not just one life. There's lots of people that are being impacted. That's so furthest from the truth, that one life, but it's really I think our culture in Bergen County is used to things being this way, and they can't imagine it being where we had a center and things were a lot more empowering and into my head, like the way it should be.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think that, our decisions in our communities should not be reactive, right? Because if you're reacting, then you've already let the problem get too bad. And so, we know that there is a need. So the problem is already there. But let's try to, don't let it be too late where you're only reacting. Let's try to take proactive measures. Let's try to really, reflect, and like it's not like it doesn't matter how it looks. Like that's what I don't understand. Like, let's not preoccupy ourselves with like, how is this going to look for our image? Like, I mean, there are so many people moving out of New York, you know, and LGBTQ families are looking for places to root. I know at least a handful of new families who have moved, you know, in this last year alone to Bergen County. And, you know, this is one of those things that would be a huge plus for them, knowing that there's a community and a safe space,
Yeah.
right? You know, we all find each other by accident, and it shouldn't be that way. You should have an intentional space for every community. And we're already recognizing so many other communities. This is one that touches every race, every religion, every creed. So we shouldn't be left out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you. I just want to ask you a few
Let's
questions.
make it happen.
Yes, let's make it happen. So just to be clear, you know, this is being recorded, and do you give consent for this to be made public?
Yes.
And do you feel comfortable with everything that was talked about?
Yes.
Oh, awesome. And just want to say, I think we are so lucky to have you, because you're so intelligent and you're so strong advocate for our community. I mean, like a leader, and because honestly, you know, our community is like so disempowered, and often like we're invisible, we don't matter, we don't count. And to have someone so strong like you to be out there doing this work, we are so blessed to have you. And I just want to say thank you for
Oh,
doing all this stuff. It's
my
really,
pleasure.
thank you.
I don't even think about it. It's really just one of those things. If you have agency, use it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, and I'm thankful to be in a place that I can. And, you know, even though I'm not in Bergen County anymore, you know, Bergen County holds a very special place in my heart, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
yeah,
And it shouldn't take any one person, you know, being there for it to happen, right? Just because I don't live there anymore, you know, I'm still advocating for these things. You know, we all should be.
yeah.
It shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't need any one figurehead, right? You know, like I remember when I moved in, and I just looked around and I'm like, is there no representation here at all? You know, like
Yeah,
that's you know, that's a problem.
yeah.
You know, we talk about wanting representation all the time, right? Seeing more women, more people of color. Let's, you know, LGBTQ, same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you stepped into that role very, very nicely. And thank you for that. And that's not an easy thing to do. And it's a very scary thing to do. I don't think people get that. And you know, I recognize that in you, and just saying thank you for
Oh,
doing
thank
that.
you.
Yeah. Well, I think we're about done. If you want to say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah. Do you need like a bio bit or anything like that?
Yeah, I
Or
was gonna
that's
do
fine.
in this and then do the
Okay.
bio. Okay.
Okay. I mean, I just want to say I miss everyone in Bergen County, and, you know, just keep fighting. You know, there's still so much more to be done. You know, we have a planet to save, but we also have a community to save, and, you know, everything is local. So look around. You know, the need is still there. I know that we fought really long and hard for 4 or 5 years to undo or try to start undoing a lot of damage that the prior administration did. And, you know, I would remind you that, you know, one of the biggest things that they pushed for, and is still now, even I would say, is gaining momentum, is all this anti-trans legislation. And so, you know, the fight isn't over. And there are a lot of people who are hell-bent on, you know, casting out certain members of society and deeming them less than. And you know, we're all worthy of having a shot at, you know, a fulfilling and thriving life. And I know that this community can come together and do good things. And I'm looking forward to seeing what everybody does to make this center a reality.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Let me just end this.